Hi kids, it's Just Be the Clown. Justin Wright, former producer of Dance O Dance, the live, all ages free, public access dance show that was seen in Olympia, Washington, Lacey Tumwater, Thurston County area, Channel 22 from 1997 to 2021. I was in charge of it for about 10 years and then rejoined it at the beginning of the pandemic for a final year of stuff. I want to be more um, personal today. Um, I know I want to talk about KAOS Radio and the influence on Dance O Dance, and it opens up a can of worms. Um, uh, so I want to focus on my gratitude about the people and the resources, the communities that made it happen, and I'm tinged with melancholia about it ending and some of that. So let me just launch right into it. Um, I want to thank my mom for our home audio or music collection that we had when I was growing up. We had this many LPs. We had a big collection from the 60s and 70s from Joni Mitchell, Jethro Tull, Grateful Dead, John Denver, the Beatles, Janis Joplin, Santana, and Melanie. Off the top of my head, a huge collection that I got into listening to. And when I first started requesting my own collection, I requested Cat Stevens and Queen and Billy Squier and Yes and Echo and the Bunnymen and Cabaret Voltaire and U2, just off the top of my head. In the time of the early 80s and the beginning of MTV, there was a lot of music that I started to say, I want a copy of that. So I had my own LPs. And when I was 17, I made my first mixtape for my first girlfriend. And that became a love language, something that for every connection, every liaison, every girl that I was interested in, they would get a mixtape, or they would get love bombed with a bunch of mixtapes. And there came to be a point where I realized I might not get the reaction that I want out of this, and I might never see this tape again. So I would keep a copy for myself, and I would listen and think fondly of that person. Um, there were a few instances where the sentiment was reciprocated, and I really value and grateful for the mixes that I was given back. Some of them, most of them, took more time in the presentation than I did. The decorations on the J cards were exquisite and crafty and so on. Um, but that the sentiment continued well into adulthood and up until my last relationship, where after I got to a point of like, I'm never going to make a mix for someone again. It's too hard. There's too much that gets involved, I guess, in it. And so that's some of the context of how the Dance O Dance soundtracks came out. Like I've said before, so I was at Evergreen, and then I got a show on KAOS at 2 in the morning, and go into the music library there, and it's floor to ceiling shelves of CDs in a whole room, all the walls. Another room, the same thing with albums, and then on another floor down in the basement was the crypt. So an abundance, and it just kept coming in every day, every week. There would be new releases, and I had, like I say, sort of a broad appreciation of different musics at the time, being 26, 27, and I liked soundtracks from movies, and I saw those were already curated mixtapes and give you a cross genres and something to associate the narrative with it. But I loved Indonesian gamelan orchestras and pop and jazz and blues and all the genres. Um, now once a year they would have an annual sale and they would purge all the CDs that didn't get enough airplay to warrant them staying in the permanent collection. And they also had the hot box. So bands, artists that were coming to town, or if something new came out, they would put that right there by the console. So the DJ would be like, "This is great," and you could see on the labels were marked with the initials of the other DJs who'd played it, and the date, and you could say, "Okay, this has been vouched for. Somebody liked this. I'll try that too." Um, so I wanted to touch on some of those influences, like "Free Things Are Cool" show with Diana Aarons, and "What's This Called" with Jim McAdams, also known as Ricardo Wang, also known as DJ Dead Air of the Dare to Air Fresheners, who recently has a new CD out, 25, 30 years later. The Dead Air Fresheners has another CD out, so congratulations. I'm really impressed, and you were an influence. He was also in Infectious Waste Theater as Disinfectant Man, and he was a DJ at Thekla, where I would go on Sunday nights where there was no cover and dance to a mostly empty dance floor. So he provided some music for Dance O Dance, and came and danced on the show, and is one of that small group of people that would wear a dress, and that was awesome to see on TV. And a show like Artichoke with Brooks Martin, and Radio 8 Ball bears particular mention because that was hosted by Andros Jones, and the concept of that is you ask a question, like asking a question to the tarot cards or the I Ching, and he would pick from a random pile of CDs and press shuffle function, and the song that came up would be the answer to your question. And I was fascinated by that, and it always seemed to hit spots uh, of philosophical reflection that needed to be. It was full of synchronicity, and I would call week after week, and sometimes they would be about me and my life, and sometimes it would be more like, well, I'm going to call to get a song for the show. And so his artistic tastes were wide and varied, and he's probably the most famous person that I'll list on today's list. Uh, and he's gone on to do another thing, podcast. The World Is Wrong, I believe it's called. Um, and I want to mention which was the show that Jenny Jenkins put on. Jenny Jenkins and I have a long history of different collaborations. She was on Infectious Waste Theater and cast me in her film Love Is Stupid, where I got to hook up with Mira Yomtov Zeitlin and Mary Water. I was the non-consensual polyamorist, the jerk. And so, well, I tried to have a relationship, a physical relationship with these two women. I wound up with neither. That was the problem with that show. So that's a, a great piece of work. She was in Flip of a Coin too with Chris Smith. Jenny Jenkins was, and yeah, so over the years I've been very impressed with her music, and going to her shows, it would become a big sing-along. A lot of people familiar with it. Fun, quirky. There's a lot of overlap in social circles um, with her, and that sort of brings me to the tender part of the talk, where through her social circles I was able to meet people who became girlfriends. I had several long-term relationships, and they meant a lot to me, and they involved dance in some cases and mixtapes for sure. One of those people, whose name I don't want to, out ex-girlfriends and dredge things into a even more awkward territory, I guess. But one of those young women was also a volunteer operator at KAOS, and so her musical tastes and her social circle, and her care and affection for me, and the attention that I got out of the energy of being in a relationship, made Dance O Dance grow and become more than it had been. And when it was over, um, you know, the mixes would take a dark turn. I guess there would be a fallow period, kind of um, you know, bittersweet, and um, well, yeah, I mean, you know what it happens when you have a breakup, and many of you may know what it happens when you are in an artistic collaboration with someone that you're intimately involved with, and that you don't necessarily want to watch yourself and that person dancing together in some awkward way that telegraphs the future of you not being together as a couple anymore. So, you know, I'm thankful that it happened. I want to be more appreciative and grateful that it happened than bitter and sad that it ended. But the same thing was true again, because then I got engaged and I got married and I became a young parent, and you know, my ex-wife directed a show, and her musical taste and her social circle became part of this. Without her support, the show wouldn't have continued. Right? It's a big endeavor to do every month and generate all this music and motivate all these people to show up. And but the, you know, the anxiety and irritability that I would go through took a toll, and there came a time at about the 10-year mark where, um, you know, I chose to step away and focus on uh, the relationship, my family, and my career, and becoming a clown, and sent direction that way. Um, so in the final year, when I came back after all this time, after divorce and so on, um, I wound up being in a relationship during the pandemic and during the time of Zoom. And that person was the director. They pressed the button that selected which camera was going to be on screen. And her musical taste and her social circle uh, gave life, vitality, energy, newness, diversity, to the show, and then when it was over, made it a sad thing to reflect on and watch back, and difficult for me. When it was over, I left town and the county and the state, and so even though I could sort of technically produce through Zoom me dancing in this bedroom or somewhere else here alone, um, in a um, in a way that was um, different, different, sadder, but putting forth that effort to show up and move the body through the feelings of loss. Um, I started this whole series by saying I've been going through a hard time, and especially so over this past year and a half of this transition, I guess, this ending of one thing, and now looking for something new to motivate me and to build on the complexity, the history of my previous work. It's not something I necessarily am going to recommend that others engage in. This idea of co-creating with your loved ones. It's hard work, and it's not something I want to redo and make a new kind of dance or dance. Yeah, but we had so much fun, and I can look at episodes and go, "This was art," and this was part of a group, a community, neighborhoods, um, families. Yeah. Um, I promised I'd make 3 videos this week, and I just launched into this one, and I think you know, I've said what I need to say for today. Thank you for listening, paying attention. Um, like and subscribe, share, comment. I want to hear about people that were on the show with their loved ones and how it feels looking back on that, or the kind of the mixture of nostalgia, um, pride, regret, uh, whatever the perspective you have after all these many years. All right, so thanks so much.